Welcome. I am Lucinda Curran, your host for the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium, a world first event. And I'm going to hand over to declutter coach Maureen Torpey for this session.
Hi, Lucinda.
Hi, Maureen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I would like to introduce you to our audience. So in our conversation, it will become clear what Lucinda does and how her knowledge can help you. Lucinda, could you please tell us about your work?
I'd love to. Thank you. Primarily, I'm a registered Chinese medicine practitioner, and I work using mostly acupuncture and Chinese herbs, but there's also other parts of Chinese medicine, and I work with people with environmental sensitivities. I'm also a building biologist, which means that I go out to people's homes and workplaces, and I audit them in terms of what may be impacting on their health. I also do a range of other things as well, which are all really with the same goal of making a positive difference in the world and disseminating information. I offer online courses and coaching specifically for those with environmental sensitivities. I also do a radio show, and I'm an author.
Lucinda, how did you come to do this work?
Thank you for asking that. Well, I actually moved to the inner city to do my Chinese medicine work, and I found that I've always been sensitive, and moving to the inner city, things went from mild to moderate. But not long after I got here, I needed to actually go to hospital to get back surgery. And when I came out of the anaesthetic, what had become moderate level reactions had become quite severe. But looking back, I think I always was sensitive, and I do have to formally thank my mother for not being a perfume wearer. I'm sure if she had have been, I either would be extremely sick now and still, or I wouldn't be here. It would have been too much for me. So if she wore perfume like women do today, things would be quite different. I think I've always been sensitive. Perfumes have always been a problem. Car fumes, cigarette smoke, all of that. After I got myself home from hospital, though, I did actually go to some experts for help. I went to specialists in the field, and I actually got no help at all. And I realised I was on my own. And at first, I was really quite devastated with that. I was really, distraught that you go to the doctor to get help and you don't get any. And I was bamboozled, and I was suffering a lot at the time, so I really struggled with working out what to do. But then I also realised that being on my own with my recovery was actually really exciting. It was up to me and I could do it. Luckily, I've got Chinese medicine at my fingertips, already being trained in that. So I worked really hard on my recovery, and I'd have to say that now I'm almost 100% recovered. So the other thing that happened for me was while I was lying there in the hospital bed, I realised that I was suffering from multiple chemical sensitivities, or chemical sensitivities as I prefer to call it. And fortunately, I'd already heard about it, so I knew what was going on. But while I was lying there, I decided that as soon as I was able to, I would actually study building biology. I'd heard about it years before, but hadn't had a chance to study it, and I think really getting as sick as I did was a momentum for me to then go, that's it, I need to study this because I need to make sure nobody gets as sick as I am. So for me, I really feel that it's an ideal set of skills to really make a difference in the lives of others.
Could we back up a little bit? Could you tell us, please, what is a building biologist?
Sure. So basically, a building biologist is a person who's had the relevant training to go into people's built environments to assess the way that they impact on people's health or the health of the inhabitants. So that includes pets as well. So in my work, I go into homes, schools and workplaces, and I look at all the different things that could be impacting on their health. From things like the building materials and building design, because a lot of our modern building materials are probably sort of a bit loath to use the word, but they're quite toxic. A lot of our woods aren't solid wood anymore. They're actually ground up wood, so sawdust pressed together with formaldehyde-based glues. So all of that can be quite toxic, as well as with building design. With the new energy efficient ratings, basically that means our homes are no longer breathable. They're kind of quite airtight. So it's like living in a sealed up, like a press seal plastic bag. And the way we see, as building biologists see buildings, is that they should be like a living, breathing organism. So there's lots of aspects to it. All of that comes into it. And then I look inside a place too. So things like electromagnetic fields, so looking for what their sources are and how high the readings are. Looking at indoor air quality, and I think a lot of people don't realise that often our indoor air is much more polluted than our outdoor air, sometimes as much as 10 times more polluted. I also look at lead and other heavy metals, as well as biological contaminants, which include things like mould, looking at drinking water as well.
You know, you amaze me. Every time we talk, I learn more and more about you and more about the dangers that are all around us, and it's so important that you're doing what you're doing. I'm curious to know, what do you actually do as a building biologist? Could you give us an example?
So not long ago I was actually called out to a home that was being built in country Victoria, which is in Australia. They'd chosen a whole lot of amazing building materials, so recycled timbers. They coated them all with breathable finishes, so the varnishes and the stains. They also used low VOC paints that were the non-toxic variety. And they'd really put a lot of thought into every single detail. They had a sealed wood heater that also heated their water, and the water pipes that were heated would then heat parts of the home. They'd worked out a system so they had passive ventilation happening. The placement of wiring, the electrical wiring had even been considered, and they'd done an absolutely amazing job, and the home was stunning. But there was a room that was built onto the side of the hill. What I mean by that is that one of the walls was actually flush against the ground. Although they'd taken precautions with waterproof barriers and drainage, and a whole lot of other things actually as well, while I was there and I was checking the home, I actually found that the wall was actually wet, and it wasn't because it was freshly poured concrete. It was actually wet from the moisture coming through it. So that actually was creating a potential for mould to grow, and once you've got a problem with mould, it can contaminate the entire house, as well as the individual, and cause biotoxin-related illnesses. So that's one of the jobs I've done.
What are your goals with your work, Lucinda?
Ultimately, my big goal is to make the world a safer place. And within that, I aim to prevent others from developing environmental sensitivities. And also, I want to assist those who are already affected in reclaiming their health.
Very worthy goals. You're very specific about the type of client you work with in your Chinese medicine practice. Could you tell us more about that, please?
So I've chosen to work in the area of environmental sensitivities, firstly because I know firsthand what it's like not to be able to get help. I feel that really with the combination of building biology and Chinese medicine, that it's a really unique skill set, and that combined with having been there myself puts me in a position to make a real difference in my community. The other part of it is that by working only with people with environmental sensitivities, it means that I can make my treatment space as safe as possible. So it really does reduce the amount of fragrance that comes into the room, EMF and all the rest of it. And I'm fortunate too that the clinic that I'm in, we have a fragrance-free policy. So that's, I think, really, really positive. So we work really hard at keeping the clinic as safe as it can be for people with environmental sensitivities, so that they can come in and relax and be safe while they have their treatments.
You know, I'm finding that more and more, as my accent might indicate. I'm in Canada, and I'm finding in the place where I live, many buildings have signs now to not wear scent because people are sensitive, and I think it's so good.
Every time I hear what's going on in Canada, I get really excited because there's so many positive things already in place. There's also public housing that the Canadian government provides that's safe for people with environmental sensitivities.
Are your services specific only to Australia?
Chinese medicine and building biology are, because I need to be face-to-face with the person. And also in terms of my registration for the Chinese medicine work, I'm not allowed to work with anybody that I actually don't have that face-to-face contact with. So for that, people need to be able to either come to the clinic or I can go to them. And I do that a lot for my environmentally sensitive clients because sometimes they're not actually able to come in. But I do also offer coaching and mentoring, online courses, and as well as that, I love doing my global online events like the radio show and things like this, the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium.
So Why are you so passionate about what you do?
I think once you've been there, I really don't think it's possible not to do something about it. When I first got quite sick myself, I realised that people called themselves canaries. And that harks back to the canary in the coal mine. So when the canaries were used to warn of danger. And that's really what we're doing. We're warning the rest of the world who, oddly enough, seems oblivious to the fact that there's a lot of problems with man-made so-called technology and progress. So I promised way back that I'd be a canary that sings and that I'd get out there and spread the word. So in a sense, I actually really feel that this is what I'm here to do. And I need to make this difference, and I'm willing to do everything that I can to make it happen.
I'm guessing that it may not be the most popular news that people hear, but I think you're doing such good work, and it's so necessary these days.
Thank you. You're right, it isn't all that well known either in terms of building biology, although it's been around for quite a while, so since the 1970s. A lot of people still haven't heard of building biologists and don't realise that we're the people that help with things like what's termed sick building syndrome. Bit by bit, it's starting to change, which is good.
Well, thank you so much, Lucinda. I really enjoyed our little chat, and I'll tell our listeners that Lucinda Curran will be a speaker at the Environmental Sensitivities Symposium, and you can find out more at environmentalsensitivitiessymposium.com.